Hey everyone, this is Victor from Cyborg for Life, and today I want to welcome you to episode 106 of Limb Lengthening Live, where the patients interview the guests. And today we are joined by a very special guest. He's the most experienced limb lengthening and deformity reconstruction in the world, who has over 37 years of experience. He has performed over 25,000 surgeries treating patients with various conditions from more than 100 countries at his 3 institutes worldwide. Not only that, but he's rapidly expanding his surgical empire with over 25 world-class A-list surgeons who have thousands of successful surgeries under their belt as well. He's also achieved surgical excellence at his practice, and he's at the forefront of innovation, pioneering hundreds of innovative techniques and devices, one of which we'll be discussing today. So without further ado, let's welcome back to the show, the king and modern-day godfather of limb lengthening and deformity reconstruction, Dr. Dror Paley. Dr. Paley, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Victor. Nice to be back.
Absolutely.
You know, we've waited a long time for this, and I did not want to come on air until we had concrete, accurate information. You know, it's no secret that ever since the STRYDE nail was removed from the market, the question has been, when will we see another weight-bearing nail to replace the STRYDE nail? And I'm pleased to report that the Max nail that was designed for that purpose has now been cleared by the FDA, and will be coming into production in the beginning of into use in the beginning of March. I'm going to get into that in more detail in a few minutes. There are some surprises, and there's some information and misinformation, and I wanted to use this platform to help clear that up.
Excellent.
First of all, I mean, to give you my background, so I've been doing limb lengthening, as Victor said, for 37 years, not just for stature lengthening, but for limb length discrepancy, for lengthening for dwarfism, and really any aspect of limb lengthening deformity correction. Nobody in the entire world has done more limb lengthening surgeries than I have, and I've been involved in the forefront of innovation of this method of limb lengthening really since 1984. You know, we've moved from external fixation to nails, and it was a gradual transition. For the first half of the 20th century, obviously, there were all kinds of very crude devices out there. Gradually, and these went from bed-mounted external devices that just applied traction or were attached to the bed to portable external fixators, both circular and monolateral, probably the most famous of which was the Lazarev device by Professor Lazarev. And then in the 1990s, we started seeing implantable limb lengthening devices. Interestingly, they actually date back to the early 80s. Professor Bliskinov from Simferopol, Ukraine, developed the first practical such device. And it became used by surgeons, not his device, but other devices in the 1990s. We start seeing the FitBone device by Dr. Baumgart. We started seeing the Albizia device by Dr. Guichet. And then the ISKD device, the first FDA-approved device, came to the U.S. in 2001. And I started in the mid-90s. Even though devices weren't FDA-approved, there were pathways to bring some of them in, and we started doing that then. And then in 2001, we switched to the ISKD, which at least it was FDA-approved, but it was not a great device. And but it was the only available device, and so we used it, and it had no really good rate control. The first really good rate control device that was FDA approved was the PRECICE Nail. In December 2011, I performed the first case of that, and that device, the P1, had a lot of problems. I was tasked with working with the engineering group to redesign it, and we came out with the P2, P2.1, P2.2, and so on. And to this day, we're using the P2.2 nail, which works extremely well. The most reliable, by far, the most reliable limb lengthening nail. Since then, the FitBone device was FDA approved, and so that is the other player. But its technology, just so you know, dates back to the early 1990s. So it's quite old technology, and it's marketed by a company called Orthofix. The PRECICE Nail started with a venture capital company called Ellipse, and then was bought out by NuVasive, and recently NuVasive was bought out by a large company called Globus. And so Globus is the current owner of the PRECICE family of nails. NuVasive came out with the STRYDE nail to replace, not to replace, to supplement the PRECICE line and to provide a weight-bearing nail. The PRECICE nail, made of titanium, was very reliable, but was not that strong, and as we'll discuss, its weight bearing was limited to somewhere between 50 to 75 pounds, depending on the diameter of the nail you used. The STRYDE nail, so I developed the PRECICE nail with NuVasive, well, with Ellipse and then NuVasive. And then I developed the STRYDE nail with Ellipse and NuVasive. The STRYDE nail, the idea was to use a stronger metal, and we used stainless steel, a version of stainless steel called BioDur. And in terms of a lengthening nail, it gets 10 out of 10 marks. I mean, it was awesome. It didn't fail. It lengthened well. It didn't break. It met all the expectations of lengthening. It had one problem that we did not foresee in the beginning. That the use of, the use of any nail, whenever you have a telescopic nail, the junction of the male and female parts of the telescope, that's where the maximum stress is. You go from a larger diameter tube to a smaller one. There are bending forces, and you get what's called crevice erosion. And you can get corrosion at that site. So one side of the nail is stressed against the other, and you get, at a microscopic level, little cracks and little crevices that develop, and you start getting some metal breakdown. And when the metal starts breaking down, it oxidizes and you get corrosion, rust. In an iron-based device, which stainless steel is iron-based, you get truly what we know as rust. And so you started getting, these corrosion particles. And the body, by the way, corrosion from stainless steel is not new. Stainless steel has been around as a metal fixation device since the beginning, since more than 100 years. And we've seen where you put a screw attaching a plate, you got stainless steel against stainless steel. You sometimes would get a little corrosion. You rarely ever saw any reaction of the bone. But what we saw with the STRYDE nail is that some patients would get thickening of the bone, that's called sclerosis, hypertrophy. And some people would get actually resorption of the bone, like the bone getting eaten up, holes developing in the bone. That was a little more worrisome because you can get a breakage. We never saw cancer develop. We never saw people getting sick or anything else. You get some local effects, and it would go away the moment you took the nail out. Okay, so the company responsibly removed the nail from the market once this became apparent. Frankly, I think a lot of patients and even doctors, myself included, felt that since we were taking the nails out anyway, and honestly, I put in, I think, more than 400 STRYDE nails. Despite, I had 2 patients out of 400 that actually complained of pain at the junction site. And the rest of them, we saw changes on x-rays, either thickening in probably 90% of them, and some holes in the bone in a small number. None of them broke. So yeah, it was a safe thing to do, but it never really caused any harm. Harm defined as, well, 2 patients had pain, okay. Harm defined as a fracture or something that required additional surgery. We were taking the nails out anyway. So some patients never even came back to get their nails out for several years. They had more reaction, but they had no symptoms. In fact, some of the STRYDE nails, because patients could weight bear, even after the nail was removed from the market, we left the nail in, rebroke the bone, and continued lengthening in patients who had not used up the full excursion of the nail. And it worked the second time. So just to let you know, I mean, it wasn't such a bad thing. But anyway, so we did miss the weight bearing. We missed the performance and the weight bearing capability of that nail. NuVasive began working on a new weight bearing nail shortly after it became apparent that there was no way there was no quick fix for the STRYDE nail. Okay, I mean, that was the initial thing. Is there something we can do, coat the ends, do something that will prevent the corrosion? They did a lot of studies. They spent a lot of money studying this, and to their credit, I mean, they really looked at it scientifically, and also to their credit, they really, you can say overreacted by removing it off the market, but they did what they felt is the most responsible, safest response. Okay. But it did leave us with back to the PRECICE nail, which is very reliable, but we were spoiled by having a full weight bearing nail. Okay, so that's where we began the redevelopment of the Max nail. I've had the privilege again of being the surgeon developer with NuVasive, and now Globus owns that, so with Globus and of this technology. They're great engineers at NuVasive who did an incredible job, so this is really a credit to the NuVasive team, led by engineer Sean Placey, who did a fantastic job on this, and the whole team, because Sean is only one of them. Chris Junker, who led that team, just did an incredible job. And it's been a privilege to work with that group. I've had a chance to visit them in California, and I've worked with them closely by phone or Zoom or other ways to collaborate. It's interesting. As we've gone through this, I've had rumors from, where some surgeons have told their patients that they designed this device and so on. And, it's fascinating because I guess I was unaware that they were even involved. But, really the hard work and all that is deserved to the engineers. I've had the opportunity to contribute to this, but to my knowledge, no other surgeon was really involved in the development of the new Max nail. Okay. So I want to get rid of a lot of miscommunications that have occurred over the years. So over the anticipated launch. The second thing is that, gosh, there's more rumors about the launch of this device than about Elvis. Elvis really is dead, and this device has not yet been launched. Both of those are facts. I did not want to contribute to this rumor mill because we didn't have any final date. So a launch date is based on several factors. One is you have to get FDA clearance, and that has just been obtained a week ago. Okay, and I'll talk more about that. Secondly, you have to be able to manufacture the parts. And so then you have to manufacture, assemble, and so on. So the parts are often manufactured outside of the company and then assembled within the company. And I think that's how it's actually done. The initial batch, interestingly, of material that came back from the manufacturer was out of spec, meaning the pieces didn't fit perfectly. And that delayed the launch. So the company actually was trying in a very responsive and responsible fashion to be ready for when the FDA cleared this to have enough inventory already made. One of the things that delayed that was that some of the parts came back out of spec. So they have to be, perfectly machined to exact sizes and so on. And one of the parts was out of spec. So they immediately, changed that. And now they have the parts and nails are starting to be assembled with the correct sizes and everything else. We don't anticipate any problem from that end of things. Okay. Then you have to make sure, people come in different sizes. You need shorter nails, longer nails, narrower nails, fatter nails. There's different sizes, as I'll show you, of nails. And you want to make sure that you have all of the inventory before you release it. Otherwise, the surgeon will say, well, I need a 13 millimeter by 275 millimeter nail, and all they have is the 245. And they don't have a 13, they only have an 11.5. So, the company, again, responsibly is trying to make sure they have the full inventory. So the launch of the nail, this is as early a reliable date as anyone's going to give you. The official launch of the nail to a limited group of surgeons is going to be after March 4th or 5th, something like that week. Okay. I have the privilege of implanting the first one of these as the surgeon inventor. And we may even get to do it a little bit earlier than that date. Okay. So but that it's not going to be before then. So all these surgeons who've told you a date, okay, I apologize, but that date, okay, was not based on any hard information. And even the date I'm giving you right now, although it's as reliable as anything you're going to get, is subject to change if there's anything that gets in the way. Okay? So I think you can hang your hat on this date. It's probably 98% reliable. Okay? But it's, and the company has the best intentions, okay, to do this. And, if you've ever worked with companies about a launch of a new product, you learn to be patient. It's not the same as once a product is out there for a long time. Okay. I've developed a lot of products over the years, and I've worked with P1, P2, and all the various Ps since then. Okay. And there have been several models, and there have been several problems, even unexpected ones like the corrosion. When a nail's working perfectly, you think you're out of the woods, but so you got to be, with these advanced technology devices, you just have to realize that these things are still in a cycle of improvement, development, and so on. But you have a very responsive company before NuVasive, now Globus, both of whom are very responsive and responsible regarding that. Okay, so you're in good hands. If you're not comfortable being one of the earliest patients with a new device, then you should indicate that to your surgeon and not be part of that initial launch. I can tell you with the STRYDE, we didn't have any breakages, any mechanical problems when we started, and so on. It launched perfectly. By the way, same thing with the P2.2. By the time we got to P2.2, I mean, just it was, as long as you stayed within the parameters, it did fine. Okay. So Now to the part that everybody's interested in. Is this a full weight-bearing nail? Okay. And I'd like to show you some slides. And then I'm going to explain, if I talk about PRECICE Max, go to the next slide. So many things have been done in the new, it's a titanium nail. So much less risk of corrosion issues with titanium. What makes it stronger, the design has allowed thickening of the wall. And for example, in the P2 to protect against rotation, other things, you got these little notches, they're gone here. So there's a different interface, which allows thickening of this outer wall. I guess my
Mouse. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
you're not seeing it. Okay. You can see those little notches at the junction at the top. And then when you get rid of that crown there, you can thicken up the nail. This is just one example. There are many things that have strengthened this nail. Next slide. But it is titanium. So if you look at the top one, you've got P2. It's actually the P2.2. It's not 2.1, but whatever. The STRYDE and P Max. Okay, the new nail. And hold on, this. So the diameters of the nails, okay, are go to the next slide. I just want to check my slides. Go to the next one. Yeah. Okay. Go back. So the FDA recommendations currently are, well, that the PRECICE nail is 25 pounds, 50 pounds, and 50 pounds by diameter. Just so you know, doctors don't recommend that. We actually recommend 75 pounds for the 12.5 nail. So you can see the PRECICE 8.5 is 25 pounds, 10.7, 50 pounds, and then 12.5 is 50 pounds. So I've been using those nails for years, and we allow 50, 50, and then 75. So we don't exactly follow the FDA recommendations on those, okay? And that has kept us safe and not having breakages of the PRECICE nail. The STRYDE nail, the official recommendations were for the 10 millimeter nail, 150 pounds, 11.5, 200 pounds, and 13 millimeter nail, 250. We pretty much followed that one. I think we allowed the 10 millimeter nail to go 175, 11.5, we allowed it around up to 200, and 13, 250. So that is pretty, and that's pretty much full weight bearing for most people. The P Max, always, it comes in different sizes, 10, 11.5 millimeter diameter, 13, and then 14. And then all of a sudden you're shocked when it says 50, 50, 50, 50. Makes no sense, right? That the 14 millimeter nail, which is so much stronger, I don't know if you guys know biomechanics, but the increase in strength of a rod is equal to the fourth power of its diameter, okay, of the increase in diameter. So what happens is that an increase from 10 millimeters to 14 millimeters is so large that the increase is to the fourth power. It means a 14 millimeter nail could probably take a 300-pound person if a 10 millimeter nail can take 50. Okay, or more, just by pure biomechanics. So why would they do that? So what's happened is because of what happened with STRYDE, the FDA is gun shy and decided, since the mechanism's the same, like the lengthening, the motor is the same, that's okay. It's made of titanium like the PRECICE 2 nail, so that's okay. But weight bearing wise, yeah, we're not approving it for more than what PRECICE was approved to, which is 50. The FDA attached a warning, not a contraindication. A warning means they don't recommend something. It's kind of like on cigarette packages. This could be harmful to your health, okay? And does not say you can't smoke. Now, it's not a good idea to smoke, but, but that's all I'm explaining to you is that the FDA attached a warning to this. A warning is a warning, and it means that any doctor should tell their patient that this nail is recommended to be by the FDA to only allow 50 pounds weight bearing for all sizes, all diameters. Okay? I've just told you that. I've followed the guidelines of what I'm supposed to do with any patient. Now, if you ask my opinion, so we as doctors are allowed to decide how we prescribe things. FDA does not tell me how to prescribe. Now, if the FDA put a contraindication, meaning you cannot ever use this nail with more than 50 pounds weight bearing, then it puts us as doctors at risk of liability if you weight bared more and you broke the nail. A warning is different, okay? So there is a warning, black box warning. I need to let you know this, okay? And I just need to put it in perspective what that warning means. Now, go to the next slide. Let me share with you some of the, actually go back. There should be a picture somewhere. Go back. There, this. Let's start with this. This is what happens in the lab. You do what's called a 4-point bending test. And the nail itself, that's actually an old P1, okay? But it's the same test as being used now as was used then. This is a standard industry test. What they do is they first put the nail in its weakest configuration. So an 8-centimeter lengthening nail is weakest when it's fully lengthened out. It's strongest when it's not started lengthening yet. So you have two tubes inside of each other. But once the two tubes come apart, you have the least amount of material in the middle of the nail. And that's the biggest risk is for bending, okay? You don't have as much risk of it collapsing in this direction, shortening. Your biggest risk is the nail bending and breaking, okay? And look, breakage is going to occur one of two ways. Either the screws break, but we're using basically the same kind of screws, same strength as before. And there are thousands of cases now where the screws haven't broken. So the screws are a pretty good bet. So the main difference is the body of the nail. And the body of the nail is tested by a 4-point bending test. Now, what they do is they load the nail with, you see those two middle points, that are pressing down, and the nail is kind of cradled at its ends. So two middle points push down, and they push down with the amount of load that we just said. So if you are 50 pounds, they'll push down 50 pounds. If you're 250 pounds, they're going to push down. In other words, if you put 250 pounds on this in a bending mode, which is the easiest failure mode for the nail. But they don't do it once. They do it 1,000,000 times. So this machine just keeps going boom, 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 boom. And it does it that way in order to test or simulate walking. So when you walk, every time you take a step, that's one cycle of load. Then you take the load off, and then you put your foot down again, another load. So, eventually when you walk, and if you walk a lot, you end up doing quite a few steps. It takes a lot to get 1,000,000 steps. Any of you use those stepper things, how many steps you did? I mean, it's a huge amount to get to 20,000 a day, right? Most people do like 5,000 a day. How many do you get, Victor?
About 10,000.
Okay. So let's say 10,000 if you're not working out or not, is average. Do the math. 10,000, how many days will it take you to get to 1,000,000 cycles? Okay. So you need, 10,000, 10 to the fourth. So you need, is it 100 days, I guess? 100 days. So take 100 days. So 1,000,000 cycles is it's a lot. If you're not going to see a breakage by then, you're probably not going to see, a breakage. Okay, so it's and it is an industry standard. The FDA did not suggest any alternative testing mode to show that this nail can take more load or take the 250 pounds, which is full weight bearing, 200 pounds. Because this is the industry standard, this test, okay? And all the previous nails, by the way, the STRYDE nail, which has stood the test of time, had the same testing for full weight bearing. The PRECICE nail had the same testing and showed that it can't take full weight bearing, okay? And other manufacturers go through the same thing, just so you know that. So I think it's important to understand this. Now go to the next slide. So this is that fatigue loading of 1,000,000 cycles. This is what it showed. This is the weight or the load at which the nail broke. Okay? This is how much it could handle. So in the PRECICE nail at 8.5 millimeters, it broke at 84 pounds done 1,000,000 times. Okay? And the 10.7 at 118 pounds and the 12.5 at 191 pounds, which for most people is full weight. Now, the way it works in engineering, most of the time, at least when it comes to medicine, we like a 2-to-1 ratio. Meaning, if it's going to break at 84, we're going to allow you to put on 40 pounds. Okay? And if the other one's going to break, or 42 pounds, if the other one's going to break at 118, we're going to allow you to take, 59 pounds, 60 pounds, let's say, weight bearing, right? And if the 12.5 is going to break at 191, we're going to let you take up to, what is that, 95, 96 pounds, right? And we're even more conservative than that, and we basically allow roughly 50-50 and then 75 for those. That's what we clinically allow. These numbers, most docs don't even know these numbers. I am sharing this with you because, look, I believe that the best patient is the educated consumer who knows things. So I want you to know these numbers. This should not be a secret. It should be, numbers that are available. The STRYDE nail, okay, come and gone, but remember the performance. So few breakages. And I occasionally saw a screw break, but never the nail, okay? 10 millimeter nail, 218 pounds at 1,000,000 cycles. Finally broke it, okay? So 11.5, 280, 13, 320. Divide each of those numbers by 2 to know what the reasonable limit is. So at the 10 millimeter nail, yeah, it was a little over 100 pounds, then a little over 140 pounds, and then about 160 pounds, right? for the, and yet the limits that the company actually allowed for 13 were 250 pounds for 13, and we'll see. I have them listed, but these are the data, and a 2 times factor is very conservative. So it wasn't breaking at those numbers. It wasn't breaking until you got to this large number. And the new PMax, 10 millimeter nail, 190 pounds. Divide that by 2, 95 pounds is, and they're allowing 50. Let's go to the other extreme. 14 millimeter nail, 450 pounds. That's 225 is the half. They're allowing 50. Okay? And by the way, that makes sense. It's so much bigger diameter, it's going to be much stronger. And 13 millimeter nail, 320, the half is 160. So, you can come to your own conclusion. Next slide. So in terms of where before the FDA came to this, where we thought this should be, okay? So I don't think the 10 should be at 250. I think that's an error. But I think somewhere about, 150, 200, 250, and probably higher than 250 for the 14 is probably a safe limit. And if you want to be conservative, go back one slide. Just do half of what those numbers are. 95, 100, 160, 225. That's ultra conservative. And since it's now going to fall upon us doctors to recommend to the patients what we're comfortable with, each doctor has their own protocol. I'm not going to speak for your surgeon. I'm going to speak for myself. So by the end of February or beginning of March, when we put her in our first one, we will be advising our patients. In fact, I'll probably be advising before then, because you guys are probably all familiar with we have a brochure from our center, which gives the most detailed information available from any center about the protocols and the rationale of cosmetic stature lengthening. So we will probably come out from our center with a revision of that brochure. That might be my Christmas homework, to work on that. And we will publish that on our stature website, which if you want to go to our website, it's limblengthening.org. We do have the Paley Institute one, which is paleyinstitute.org, but we have a dedicated stature one, which is limblengthening.org. And not .com, .org, okay? So we'll have that brochure updated within the next month for sure, maybe even in the next few weeks. But it's going to be based on this. We are going to comply with the FDA to educate patients, go back of that they are advising a warning of 50 pounds. We are a very compliant group. We are not trying to buck the FDA. Okay? But I do want to put it in perspective. I believe that maybe it'll take more testing, maybe it'll take clinical data, but a new application to the FDA will eventually go in, supporting the fact that this has been used successfully with higher loads than 50 pounds, and that 50 pounds across the board does not really make any sense. The FDA has kind of said another thing, which is 20% of body weight. which also doesn't make sense. So to me. So look, I think they just needed a parameter. The FDA tries to keep us safe. The FDA tries to prevent disasters from happening. And, you know, they have achieved that. So they are going to err on the safe side, which is good for everyone. However, FDA regulates sales by companies of devices. They do not regulate doctors. And we have the fiduciary responsibility to advise patients based on our outlook on it. You may call it an off-label recommendation, but we do off-label recommendations and use all the time. For example, when the FDA first released the P1 nail, they recommended that the ERC device, the motorized device that you put on your leg to lengthen, be done only in the office. That it could not be taken home and patient could not do it. Yeah, well, that didn't really work with our patients. We released it to our patients to use at home from day one. Okay? And that was an off-label use of that device. Okay? Because we felt that patients could be educated to use this reliably, and we took upon ourselves to educate them to do that. No patient suffered from that decision. In fact, they probably benefited because it's better to do, if you're doing a lengthening a millimeter a day, you probably can have time in the office to do it once a day for a patient, not 4 times a day. And 4 times a day should be spread out, you know, breakfast, lunch, dinner, bedtime kind of thing. I think that's what most people do. And so absolutely what we were doing was safer for patients. I am sure for myself, my colleague, well, my partner, Dr. Robbins, who we do all our stature lengthenings together. But I think I speak for all surgeons out there that none of us would knowingly make a recommendation to a patient that we felt was unsafe. Okay? So it will be the responsibility of your surgeon to advise you of what they feel is safe. They may say, until the FDA lifts this warning, we are recommending you stick with that 50 pounds. Okay? And if they say that, you should abide by it. In our case, we are likely to analyze this data carefully, thoughtfully, logically, intelligently, and come up with, and also remember, go back to the previous, and look at this number. This is, to me, the most useful data. The fact that the STRYDE numbers, so if you look at the STRYDE 10 millimeter, is stronger, a little stronger, not much, than the 10 millimeter PMAX. And I had lots of experience using the STRYDE 10. And the STRYDE 11.5 280 was definitely stronger than the 11.5 max, which is 200. And the STRYDE 13 320, comparable to the PMAX 13. And then there wasn't even a 14. So I'm definitely going to use my extensive experience with STRYDE, and I put in more STRYDEs than any surgeon in the world, more than 400 STRYDEs. I've put in more than probably 4,000 PRECICE nails. And more than 5,000 if you include all previous nails. Okay. And everything, you do in life is experience-based. So I'm going to advise my patients based on my experience. I'm happy to share that with other surgeons who may have less experience and want to know, what are we doing? It won't be a secret. Okay. But I feel that we are compliant and we are taking all of the information into hand in order to provide a responsible, reliable, and safe recommendation to patients. So I needed you to understand where I'm coming from and why I wouldn't speak up on this until I have all of the information. And I would ask my colleagues to start abiding by that if they are giving recommendations prior to the launch of this, which some have, because it just doesn't help things. And those who've been patient and waited, I applaud the fact that you have been, and we all appreciate that the PMAX is coming. There's a new kid in town, and it's going to improve the lives and outcomes of patients, who are going to undergo stature lengthening, but also, monolateral, single side lengthenings. Okay, so it's still going to improve those patients as well. Now, in addition to, we have always recommended patients walk with one cane. So even with the STRYDE, we always recommended a cane. It's especially important in weight bearing as you go upstairs, weight bearing as you step on and off curbs, weight bearing on inclines. In those situations, you increase the load on your nail. You increase the bending forces. So in those situations, we highly recommend at least one cane, if not two. By the way, you can more liberally allow full weight bearing if a patient uses a cane. Because what happens is, when I step on my right leg and lift my left leg off the ground, there immediately is a bending force, a bending moment, we call it, on my right, let's say it's in my right femur, on my right femur. Because my center of gravity is in the midline, it's putting a bend on my femur. Okay, and the nail has to resist that bend. That's that 4-point bending test that's happening. If I use a cane, not a crutch, not a walker, a cane in my left hand while I'm standing with all my weight on my right leg, I neutralize the bending force. There's almost no bending force anymore. Now what's happening is part of my weight that when I'm standing on two legs, half the weight goes through the right leg, half through the left. So you greatly reduce any load, and all the load is in axial. That means up and down, and not in bending. When you stand on one leg, that's when the bending loads come in. But if you put a cane down, just touch the ground lightly with a cane. During the time you're putting your maximum weight on one leg and you have the cane in the opposite arm, it's as if you're standing on both legs. You now have all axial load, so almost no bending, and you've reduced half the weight to going through your arm. So it's not all going through your leg. So that's an intelligent way, by the way, to allow full weight bearing. You're still full weight bearing. Okay. The only way to stop full weight bearing is a walker. A walker allows you to put part of your weight on your arms and part on your legs. Even crutches don't do that, because only one crutch is on the ground, kind of like a cane. So you are full weight bearing, but you're reducing the load on your nail, reducing the risk of a fracture. We did one cane with the STRYDE. We'll definitely recommend one, and I might even recommend two. Look, it's good for balance. It's good for, you know, going upstairs, downstairs. Then if you get mugged, you can hit somebody with it. You know, it's got lots of uses. So I think that's all I have to say about this new nail. I'm excited for it. It's a new era, and it's going to be great.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So I'm going to mute Dr. Paley for a second because we're getting an echo, but I'm going to pull up the questions that were submitted. So we'll take a few questions. Let me do that now. I'm going to pull it up here. All right, so this is the presentation, but Dr. Paley is so well spoken, he just did the whole presentation for me. So easy day from in the office. But anyway, this was the agenda today. We just did his intro. If you guys haven't seen it, yesterday I posted a 2-hour full-length interview with Dr. Paley. It was part of his Paley podcast on the channel, so go check it out. There's a link in the description of this video. It's incredible. It shows his whole journey from where he started as humble beginnings to where he is now. So I encourage you to check that out. If you want to see the stature lengthening part, it's at the hour and 52-minute mark. I have the timestamps in the description of that video. He just talked about the evolution of lengthening devices from the ISKD through the fit bone, through the albizia, all the way to the PRECICE nail. And we're going to get into the PRECICE Max questions that you guys asked, which he pretty much just explained. And then we're going to talk about the Paley Institute and what he's doing at the end there. Okay, so let me go ahead and get to those. So there's some pictures here if you guys want to see it, but that's all in the link in the description. All right, so we already know this. So he said the name is going to be the PRECICE Max. The release date, he said early March. He's going to be the first clinic to implant. So if you guys are looking to get your PRECICE Max surgeries booked, you can click the link in the description or visit limblenkthening.org or email Angelique. She's in the chat somewhere. Material, he talked about that. Titanium, he talked about the nail sizes. You guys can rewind the video to check that out. Weight bearing capacity, he mentioned that. The cost of the implant. So Dr. Paley, number F, we're going to go ahead and talk about the cost.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's no final number. I have told my patients to anticipate a price increase similar to how much it was for STRYDE. Okay. At our institute, I will tell you, we have built in a buffer of 5,000 per nail. Okay. So it's going to be, you know, definitely an increase over the prior. And we don't have final pricing yet.
Okay. All right, moving right along here. The benefits he just mentioned, it is a full weight bearing nail with the use of a cane. But again, all surgeons are going to advise their patients according to FDA regulations. But Dr. Paley just said that he's going to make that knowledge public to you patients as a consumer. And then availability, like he said, he was the chief surgeon on the design team for this nail, so he'll be the first clinic to implant. But we can go ahead and ask him, Dr. Paley, is this nail going to be available worldwide, or you said it's just going to be in the US?
So the initial launch will be a handful of key opinion leaders, KOLs they're called, who have worked extensively previously with NuVasive and now with Globus, and who have been doing the largest number of stature lengthenings. So you can guess the sites. But it is a limited launch. Once it's, and the purpose of the limited launch is to make sure there aren't any problems. And if there are, to address them before a general launch. It also gives a company an opportunity to build inventory. Supporting one surgeon is easier than supporting 5, which is easier than supporting hundreds of surgeons. And so it will eventually be available to all surgeons in the United States, and it will eventually be available to all surgeons in countries where Globus sells. Okay. I mean, internationally, it takes much longer for it to be available. And, you know, you can look at the STRYDE nail as a perfect example. You know, I started using the STRYDE in May 2018. They were very cautious on that, and I don't think they allowed anyone else to use it till September 2018. This time, I think they're going to allow a handful of people to use it off the launch. And then after that, I think it wasn't until January that it was released to the public.
Gotcha. Okay.
Other surgeons meaning.
Okay. All right, we're going to move along here. All right, so we are on our first page of submitted patient questions. We're going to just try to limit this about 15 minutes between this and then the live Q&A. So the first one is, I want to do quadrilateral lengthening with Dr. Paley and Dr. Robbins, but I want 8 centimeters on my femurs and 5 centimeters on my tibias. Do I have to space it out a year apart, or can I condense it within a 4 to 6 month time frame if my tissues allow it?
Yeah, so by the way, this question is nail independent, so it doesn't matter if it's PRECICE or Max or previous STRYDE. The limitation, so when you do quadrilateral, first of all, you know, you can't do them all one day because of the risk of fat embolism. So we do them 3 weeks apart. We do the tibias first, and then we do the femurs 3 weeks later. So when you're lengthening both femur and tibia together, you are stretching not just the muscles of the thigh, the muscles of the calf, but the part between the calf and the thigh that they share in common is the nerves and blood vessels. Okay. And what happens is that let's say the sciatic nerve, if you were lengthening 1 millimeter a day in the femur, and even if you're lengthening 3/4 millimeter a day in the tibia, that nerve would be lengthening 1.75 millimeter a day. It would get into trouble. So it's too much. So we slow the lengthening down. We even lengthen only 3/4 millimeter a day in the femur and 2/4 a day in the tibia, which is 1.25. It's still too much for the nerve past a certain point. And so what'll happen is your body may not tolerate it. Now, some people tolerate it better than others. The real answer to your question is you can't make that. You can decide if you can get past the 5 and 5 centimeters. So normally you can get 5 centimeters in the femur and 4 or 5 in the tibia with quadrilateral. When we get to that point, okay, if you're doing well, let me define well, your ankle can still come above 90. Your knee goes fully straight and can bend at least to 90. Your pain is not unmanageable. The bone is healing well at the femur and the tibia. At that point, you can decide to go from 5 centimeters in the femur to 6, not to 8, to 6. Why 6? You're going 3/4 millimeter a day. At 3/4 millimeter a day, it takes 14 days, 2 weeks, to get 1 centimeter. And so which is how often we see patients. So the patient will come back 2 weeks later. If when they come back 2 weeks later, they're doing well, good knee motion, pain under control, not requiring narcotics, things like that. X-ray shows good healing of the bone. At that point, if you're still doing well, you can go from 6 to 7, and so on. So the answer is not determinable at this point. We tell most patients you can get 5 plus 5, but the tibia doesn't tolerate lengthening as well as the femur. So frequently, we actually can only get 4 centimeters in the tibia before your Achilles tendon gets too tight. But the knee's doing well, which means that you can lengthen more in the femur. So we'll get 6 and 4, that kind of thing. So a responsible limb lengthening sets these limits and then reassesses when you get to those limits and not before. If you make promises to patients that, yeah, I can get this much and that, you're misleading them, because you really don't know till then. And if you keep going despite getting an overly tight Achilles, losing either knee bending or knee straightening, you're sacrificing function to get length. And you're going to possibly have permanent disability, lack of motion, so stiffness, even nerve issues could arise, and so on. So at the Paley Institute, we will not sacrifice function for more length. If you want that, you better go to someone else. But we won't do it. I can't tell you how many people I fix who've had lengthening, especially abroad at some less reputable centers. Okay? There's one surgeon in particular in India. I'm not allowed to mention names, but he just cripples people. It's just horrible. And so just remember that I know cost is very important to patients, but if that's your basis for choosing your surgeon, you may end up with some serious physical and psychological issues.
Gotcha. Yeah. In fact, Dr. Paley, the patient that you corrected went to that surgeon in India, and he was on my live stream a couple weeks ago, and he was thankful to you for saving his leg, but not all over. The next question is from John. He's asking, is there a negative impact on biomechanics for bilateral lengthening versus quadrilateral lengthening? For example, if you did 7 centimeters all in the femurs versus 5 centimeters in the femurs and 2 centimeters in the tibias, does a skewed interlimb ratio amongst the 2 limb segments affect your affect the chance of you getting arthritis early?
Yeah, there's no evidence that altering the proportions from limb lengthening leads to arthritis. It's more aesthetic than anything else. There's one paper only, study out of Cleveland, which studying cadaver bones found that patients who had a larger femur than tibia, but this is of natural causes. This is not of limb lengthening, okay? There was a higher incidence of earlier arthritic changes. I have followed, look, femur lengthening is the most common, and I've followed patients now. My earliest cosmetic stature lengthening was 1988. I'm defining that versus our dwarf lengthenings where they have abnormally short limbs, and that first one was 87. But I have seen some of my patients in follow-up 30 plus years later, and I've not seen any arthritis of the knee or any other joint of the lower limb, even though, we altered their proportions, sometimes the femur, sometimes the tibia. So far, there's no evidence of any of that.
Gotcha. All right, we're going to move along here. Page 2. The next one is, how many surgeries with the PRECICE Max do you expect to have per month once it launches?
No idea. I mean, there's, what I can tell you is the last 3 months have been the lowest number of stature lengthenings that we've done in any 3-month period. And I'm sure it's true for all limb lengthening centers because of the anticipation for this nail, which was supposed to launch in November, then December, then January, then February, and now pushed into March. So in anticipation, a lot of patients have held off on doing this, waiting for the new nail to come out. So I think initially the floodgates will open and we will probably accommodate and do more stature lengthenings per week than we've ever done before because of the backlog. And then it'll settle down again after a few months.
Gotcha. Next one is, you've answered this before, but I told all patients I would answer their questions. How many cases of fat embolism have you had as a percentage of all stature surgeries with internal nails?
Yeah, so we studied this through 2 separate studies, and both studies showed a 4% incidence of documented drop in oxygenation post-op, which was interpreted to be fat embolism, because it's very hard to you don't actually demonstrate that there's fat. It's a what we call presumptive diagnosis or a diagnosis of exclusion. There's no other cause. I've said this before, of that 4% incidence, 1% of those, okay, a very small number, which basically is 2 patients, had very severe fat embolism, ended up in the ICU, almost died, and one of them ended up on ECMO. Thankfully, I can say both, thanks to our really great intensivists and our ICU staff, both survived. One of them decided to abort any further lengthening. One actually completed his limb lengthening, had to re-break the bones because they'd healed already, and used the existing nail, and we completed the lengthening. Interestingly, we've made some changes in our protocol since our last study. And our last study was, I think, 2 years ago. And our number of fat embolism has dropped to less than 1% for the first time. And to my knowledge, we're the only ones who track this, which is because we track everything about our stature patients. So we can then report to you what the results are. But it's been a surprising drop, and the things that have changed. So after we implemented a few things after our last study, we started giving albumin intraoperatively, and albumin seems to carry the fat with it and somehow reduce the fat emboli. That has worked really well. We have changed our reaming protocol to a much more start, stop, clean the flutes. So that the reamer, first of all, certain reamers do better than others, but we've always used the better type of reamers. The reamers, as they're going through, they act like a plunger in a syringe, but they get clogged up with bone, just like any drill. The flutes get clogged up with whatever you're drilling, wood, bone, whatever. So what we do now And you can tell this. You can tell how much they're getting clogged up by the resistance. So if we feel any resistance, we stop, we pull it out, clean the flutes, go in. It takes much longer to ream, much safer. So that has also been a major change. Another change we've done is with our anesthesia staff. So we have educated all our anesthesia providers to look for three things. They look for change in blood pressure, change in pulse oximetry level, and change in inspiratory pressures. And every time I'm reaming, even though I know they're looking for this, I ask them about all three, report them to me. And then when I do one leg, Dr. Robbins does the other leg. It's how we've always done it. And Dr. Robbins does the same thing. So and occasionally they've said, oh, we're seeing a slight drop in blood pressure. So we will double down on our precautions, slowing down, cleaning the flutes, everything else. Maybe use a smaller diameter nail than we were before. We have always been venting. That's routine part of it. That's never changed. And then the last change we made, we have a really fantastic group of intensivists, people who look after our patients if they go to the ICU. And at our place, it's actually our chief of surgery. He's a general surgeon, Robert Borrego. He's a fantastic guy. The only guy I'd want operating on me in any of these situations. And we've instituted that he gets called, or he or his team get called, even if there's been a hint that this patient had a drop of any of those parameters or shows the slightest bit of drop of pulse oximetry in the recovery room. And this was actually his suggestion. He said, if we get called sooner, we're going to institute a whole bunch of other things sooner. And so he gets involved if there's even a suggestion. And in the last year, touch wood, we haven't had a single fat embolism. That's never happened. And we do large numbers. A lot of people don't see this because they don't do big enough number. If it's only 4%, it means if you do 100 patients, you're only going to see it in 4 patients. Okay? And when I say we've dropped it to less than 1%, we've actually dropped it to 0. Now, why did I say 1%? Because I'm just don't believe that it could go that low. So 0 is less than 1%, but I don't know how much less. Okay, so to be on the conservative side, which I tend to be, it's less than 1% now. I feel really good about it. So we've really instituted a lot of things. Look, that's one of the advantages of people coming to our center. You're getting the largest experience in the world in limb lengthening and in stature lengthening, where safety is our number one thing. And bottom line is, safety comes first. And, that's why I tell people, don't worry about what you're paying for whatever. And we're not even the most expensive out there. But in the end, you got to be able, you're starting normal and you got to walk away from this normal at the end. And that I can say proudly we achieve in all our patients.
They sure do. All right. This is a kind of a funny question, but maybe there's some merit behind it. Is there any way to lengthen the forearms or the hands?
Yeah, I hate that question. Okay. So first of all, look, the advantage I have is that I have been doing limb lengthening of every long bone in the body for 37 years with over 25,000 limb lengthenings during that time. It's an inconceivable number. Many of them are forearms. Not for stature, for short forearms. One of the first papers I published was on lengthening of the forearm. I've published 3 or 4 papers now on lengthening of the forearm. Okay? Not one of them is a stature patient. And it never will be. Even for dwarfism, we don't lengthen the forearm. Okay. Now, why? The forearm is a 2-bone system, just like the tibia and fibula. But there's a very big difference. Tibia and fibula do not rotate like this. The tibia and fibula, you have the ankle at one end, the knee at the other. And lengthening both together has no negative impact on either joints, okay, as long as you don't lengthen too much relative to the muscles and so on. In the forearm, if you lengthen both bones of a normal forearm, the first thing that happens is you lose some of your rotation, sometimes all of your rotation. Rotation of the forearm is a remarkable thing. You have actually a lot. You have, 90 degrees of palm up, supination, and 90 degrees of palm down. If you even get a fracture of the forearm, which, by the way, on my left side, I broke both bones of my forearm. And I've lost, due to a lot of therapy, I've lost only 5 degrees, so it's insignificant. But if you get a change in length of one bone relative to the other, you begin to lose rotation. Okay? We have lengthened the forearm in people with arm length differences. All the 2-bone systems lost rotation. So the only indication for us to lengthen a 2-bone forearm is someone who already has limited rotation. So if you've already lost it, not a big deal. A lot of patients only have 1 bone because of certain congenital problems. Not a problem. You don't have forearm rotation. We only have 1 bone. So the main indication for lengthening of the forearm is shortening associated with only a single bone system or limited motion rotation system. But if you're a normal person, which pretty much everyone who comes for stature lengthening is, agreeing to lengthen your forearm for a few centimeters, to me, is not only fraught with complications, it's malpractice. I will testify in court against any doctor who agrees to lengthen the forearm for a patient for stature. Malpractice, below the standard of care. Okay? And if a patient then loses function, gets upset about this, even if it was their idea, their doctor needs to say no. The other one, while we're at it, finger bones, metacarpal bones, clavicles. Okay? So I'll tell you when I start getting concerned about patients' sanity and about whether they're good candidates for stature lengthening. When they're so obsessed with lengthening that they haven't even had a leg lengthening, but they're trying to find the guy who does forearms and clavicles in addition to the legs. To me, that patient, I won't even operate on them. They can go to someone else. I'm not interested because they don't get it. So my message to anyone who's considering that is get your legs done first and then look at yourself in the mirror See how you feel. I think you're going to find that you're pretty happy just getting the legs done. Occasionally, I have patients who want the upper extremities lengthened. It's completely safe to lengthen the humeri, the upper arm. And you can do it with an internal rod. And so I have done that for patients who really want that. I will actually try and talk them out of it and have them look at themselves, but I will respect their desire to have it done, but only as the last bone, not as the first bone. So we'll do the lower limbs. Once you're done with your lower limbs, if you want your upper limbs done, sure. I don't recommend it. It doesn't, there's no noticeable disproportion as long as you stay under 6-inch lengthening of the lower limbs. And other than for dwarfism, nobody should be lengthening more than 6 inches, 15 centimeters of the lower limbs. You actually start getting into trouble. But yeah, we've done arm lengthening, upper arm. We will not do forearm, will not do their feet, will not do their metacarpals, their hands, their fingers, their toes, and we will not do the clavicles. I'm going to speak about the clavicles last. When you lengthen the clavicle, you lose shoulder function. And I have a patient who was born with a shorter clavicle on one side than the other. Okay? And honestly had no symptoms, but he really bothered him. And I agreed to lengthen his clavicle. And I lengthened it exactly to the size of the other clavicle. Clavicle is the collarbone. He's begging me to shorten his clavicle now because his function is worse, his pain is worse. And, you know, saying, you were absolutely right, I shouldn't do this. So imagine doing that when you're starting off with no difference in either side and normal function shoulders. So again, in my opinion, malpractice.
Third page of submitted patient questions. He mentioned that the PRECICE Max will be released to the rest of the world after the initial launch to the KOLs, the key opinion leaders. Then the second question here is, will there be clinical trial testing for the PRECICE Max? I suppose that's kind of what the initial launch is, Dr. Paley. Is that kind of what it would be about?
So first of all, what I said is, I think they're, again, I can't speak for the company, but I think they're going to release to the KOLs. Then they will release to, you know, the rest of North America. I'll include Canada in that. And then I think they'll release, you know, overseas. So it won't be, I'm not sure if they're going to release overseas. Well, so I don't know if you know what's happening in Europe, but the CE mark, which is the way you, it's the equivalent of getting FDA approval. CE mark it's so much harder now. So it may be a while before they actually get approval for release into Europe, longer than expected. So again, I don't know. I'm just speculating. I'm just happy to know when the release to KOLs is.
Gotcha. All right. And the third question here is, should a bilateral patient wait until the PRECICE Max is used on some people before getting it planted on themselves? You mentioned this a little bit earlier, I think.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with this nail. I was very comfortable with STRYDE, and STRYDE proved to work perfectly in terms of strength. And the other issues of corrosion, we didn't see that for 2+ years. Okay, so totally up to the individual. I'm not concerned about the strength of this nail.
Gotcha. All right. So I just want to kind of ask Dr. Paley what's been going on. I saw that you guys were recently nominated for the Palm Beach County Choice Awards. Is that correct?
I have no idea. We get nominated for a lot of things. You know, I'm prouder of the things we achieve medically. You know, like we just published a new book, 440-page book on a condition that, you know, is dear to my heart, called congenital femoral deficiency. That's more important to me than any local award. But anyway,
Gotcha.
But yeah, we've opened up institutes in other countries. We have the Paley European Institute in Warsaw, Poland. It's been in operation since 2018. It actually saved us during COVID because a lot of our European patients couldn't come over. So we went over there and they all would drive to Poland and have their surgery there. So we were able to travel there all through the pandemic. We opened up in January of this year, so almost a year ago, in Abu Dhabi, and I've been back there 3 times this year doing surgery. I think you showed a quick picture of my wife and I cutting the ribbon when we opened that institute in January. So that's our footprint, and there she is next to me at the bottom right. That was in Abu Dhabi. That's Dr. Shannon and Dr. Miller, who were there with me, and that's Dr. Shamshir, who is the owner of the hospital chain, which is the Burjeel Holdings, and we are at Burjeel Medical City, which is a beautiful hospital. I mean, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, brand new hospital, beautiful operating rooms. We've done over 60 surgeries there, including stature lengthening now. We've had patients, especially patients in Asia, flying in, had several from China fly in to do surgery there. And and we're doing also several Europeans in our Paley European Institute in Warsaw, Poland. So, and we are opening in 2024 in Medellin, Colombia, Paley Latino Americano Institute. And that is very exciting. That is going to be one center where we may be able to lower the cost of lengthening with the PRECICE nail. Again, they're not going to have the Max nail for a while. More because it is a lower cost hospital than either our center in Poland or in Abu Dhabi, and lower cost physical therapy. So the costs in Poland and Abu Dhabi are similar. Maybe Abu Dhabi is just a tiny bit cheaper than Poland, but they're both cheaper than in West Palm Beach.
Gotcha. Very cool. All right. Yeah, and then how often do you visit each of these clinics? Because I have a lot of patients asking, from the European region, when is Dr. Paley going to be at Poland and then Abu Dhabi?
So 2023, we did 3 visits to each center. Right now, we're scheduled for 3 in 24 to each center. If the demand is there, we will increase. I want to comment on the picture on the top right. So that's the team now, 23 surgeons. We have 8 of us are pediatric orthopedic surgeons. And some of us, like myself, also do adults. And the others, this group of surgeons handles pretty much everything in orthopedics, from foot to hand to shoulder to spine, neck, everything. Joint replacement, sports medicine. So all aspects of orthopedics. What's unique about this group of surgeons is that I've recruited basically 2 groups of surgeons. One are these group of heavy hitters, internationally renowned, nationally renowned surgeons who were heads of departments or full professors at various universities, the top universities in the country, like Dr. Minus, who was a professor at the Brigham Hospital, one of the Harvard hospitals. He's our joint replacement and cartilage replacement surgeon. And, Dr. Feldman, who, is internationally renowned and was the head of NYU chief of pediatric orthopedics at NYU, Dr. Dobbs, who was, he was at WashU in St. Louis, and so on. I mean, it's a list of, some of the most well-regarded and best clinicians, surgeons in the country, and who attract medical tourism. So we are the largest medical tourism, orthopedic medical tourism center in the country and probably in the world. And the second group are younger surgeons who work with the senior surgeons and are apprenticed to them, and will one day inherit the practice of the senior surgeons, and who in their own right are superb clinicians and surgeons. So, it is a practice that spans all ages and levels of expertise, and really a group of some of the most academic and accomplished orthopedic, and also we have 2 neurosurgeons and several pain specialists. So I'm very proud to be surrounded by them. And we went from 11 surgeons and before the pandemic to 23 now. So we've more than doubled in size. And so I'm, very, very privileged to work with an incredible team.
That's awesome. Incredible team it is. 23 surgeons is incredible. All right, guys. We are going to go ahead. I'm going to ask Dr. Paley, how long do you have for live Q&A for a few questions from the chat?
I can hang around for a bit.
Okay. All right, guys. So put your best questions in the chat. There are a lot in here. I'm going to try to go through about 10 of them. If he has more time, we'll do that. Otherwise, you can email Angelique, which her email is right there. So I saw this picture on your Instagram, Dr. Paley. Where are you? I just got to know.
I was rock and mountain climbing I think that was in Austria.
Beautiful.
In September. One of my passions.
Very cool. All right, guys. The first question for Dr. Paley is right here. Sohab is saying, Dr. Paley, I did 6 centimeters LON on my tibias. My surgeon over-lengthened my left Achilles tendon, which killed my push-off. Is this reversible? Can we do something about it? Please help me.
Yeah. So you heard me say that I don't lengthen the Achilles tendon. This is the reason. So you're starting normal. You want to end normal. You want to be able to walk and run and jump, play sports. You lengthen the Achilles tendon. Other than walking, the rest is over. Okay? No push-off. And you need push-off for running. You need push-off for jumping. You need push-off for sports. And it's one of the reasons that we're limited in tibial lengthening, because the Achilles won't tolerate. The muscles that go to the Achilles called the gastrocnemius and the soleus. Well, those muscles are the largest muscles in the calf. And the Achilles tendon is the largest tendon in the body. And those muscles cross 2 joints. All of those factors, without getting into detail, makes that muscle regenerate less well than other muscles. And therefore, it won't tolerate more than a certain amount of lengthening. So to do more length, surgeons lengthen the Achilles tendon. That is called sacrificing function for length. So yeah, you got 6 instead of the 5 that you would have gotten with me. But is it worth it? Clearly not. And, so the first lesson is stature lengthening. If anyone offers you to lengthen your Achilles, to lengthen the gastroc-soleus aponeurosis, that's the part of the muscle that turns into a tendon higher up. Do not allow them to do so. That will be the end of your push-off. You'll be at the end of your sports, your running, jumping. Okay? So there's very few indications to ever do that. Now, if you've already had that happen, and I've had so many patients who've had lengthening done elsewhere come to me with that problem. I have restored some of their push-off by shortening their Achilles tendon, putting them into a foot down position, cutting the Achilles tendon and shortening it, letting it heal. Now I'm creating a little bit of a contracture intentionally. And then then we're doing what's called serial casting. We slowly cast them until we get them stretched back into place. And that's the only way I know to get the tendon back to normal strength.
Gotcha. All right. Somebody's saying Dr. Paley's interview posted yesterday on the channel was very informative. I told you guys, check it out. There's a link in the description. You can watch it. Timestamps are there. Paley's the GOAT. All right, where's the next question? Okay, so this one is from 88. He's saying, hello, Dr. Paley. Is there any research on the impact of having a magnet within the body for a prolonged amount of time, or is the strength of the magnet in these nails weak enough to not be a concern?
There's no negative consequences that we know about. That's all I can say.
Gotcha. All right, let's get about 5 more questions here. Here it is. Caroline. Oops, sorry. Hello, Dr. Paley. Can it be used with kids? I guess they're talking about the new PRECICE Max. If yes, what age? Thanks for the great work you're doing. Hello from Leonard M. and family.
Hi, Carolina. How are you? So it can be used in kids as much as the PRECICE can be used as kids. It's all dimensional related, length and diameter. So I don't know actually all the lengths that this is going to be available in. Diameter wise, the smallest is 10. So if your bone can only take an 8.5, then no, you can't use it. But if your bone is larger and can now take a 10, how do you know how much the bone can take? You need to ream 2 millimeters larger than the diameter of the nail. So you have to make a hole in the bone to 12 millimeters to accommodate a 10 versus only to 10.5 millimeters to accommodate an 8.5. Okay. 8.5s are available also down to 150 millimeters. While I think these nails, well, if we go by the STRYDE, I think the shortest will be at 210 millimeters. So it's all based on the length of the bone. So when you come in the next time, we'll look at that, but possibly.
All right. Let me get the next one here. So this question was actually sent to me on my WhatsApp, and he's saying, can I ask Dr. Paley if removing the femur nails and the tibia nails can be done at the same time? For removal of nails.
No problem. That's not a problem. We do that all the time. And we do a patient procedure and you walk right away. No PT needed.
Okay. Next one is, can you ask if a Gastroc-Soleus Recession and a peroneal nerve is, decompression is needed for tibial lengthening of 4 centimeters or more?
So again, I won't do a Gastroc-Soleus Recession. In someone who has normal range of motion to start with of the ankle. Peroneal nerve decompression, we will only do when we do femur plus tibia combined. So we'll do that prophylactically in those patients. We'll do it if somebody starts developing peroneal nerve problems, which is quite uncommon.
Next question here from Rocky Road. Dr. Paley, what percentage of patients who achieve 5 centimeters in tibia length suffer from long-term knee pain as a result of lengthening? Is this a real concern for tibial lengtheners?
Yeah, so the knee pain, if you're getting knee pain, it's typically at the insertion site of the nail, and it's very technique dependent. So a lot of doctors enter too low on the front of the tibia, and that can lead to knee pain, and especially around the patellar tendon. If you enter very high, like really on top of the tibial plateau, So it's literally at the beginning of the top of where the knee joint starts, right a little bit in front of the ACL ligament. That's the correct entry point, and you rarely get knee pain.
Gotcha. All right. Let's take two more questions here. Let's go with this one right here. Jono Turner is saying, I have one question, Dr. Paley. Are you seeing a rise in limb lengthening patients due to the rising height standards in dating?
I can't correlate what the reason we're seeing more stature patients is, so I can't tell you if it's related to that. I think, honestly, I think the main thing that motivates people to undergo stature lengthening is, I've talked about this before on this channel, is body image. It's how you perceive yourself. I don't think that most people do this because of dating or other things. I think most people do this because of how they see themselves. And they see themselves as short. And it's not necessarily height related, meaning someone could be 5'10", which is not very short at all, and have the same body image of themselves as someone who is 5'4", which is, for a male, is at the lower limit of normal height in the population. So it is a body image issue for most people. I don't think it's necessarily driven by standards of dating or, things, but dating or partnering is part of the motivation. So I don't want to put that down, but I don't think that's what is driving it.
Gotcha. We actually have Dr. Robbins just joined. He's on the stream here at the bottom here, but we have last few questions. This one's a good one. From Jesus Ramirez. He's saying, what are your reasons for disqualifying a patient for surgery, whether medically or because of ethical issue of some sort? You just kind of mentioned this, but you said body image disorder. So yeah, I guess. Skip this. Let me see.
Yeah, I mean, we don't disqualify many patients. If we are concerned, if we find that a patient has a psychiatric history, we're concerned if a patient has suicidal ideation, but we've even lengthened patients who have had that, but as long as we'll involve their psychiatrist, and if they feel that this will be beneficial, and we have made exceptions for that. So we really try not to disqualify patients. I've disqualified a patient once because she was trying to sell the family house under her husband's without him noticing it, and in order to have the money to do this. So, we are very careful not to get into marital discord and disputes. So we just expect transparency, honesty, cooperation from our patients. And if we feel we have that, and patients are not obviously psychotic, we are usually prepared to proceed.
Gotcha. Okay, we're going to do these last question here. This one for the 12.5. Oh, so yeah, he did a full talk about the nail bending at the beginning of this presentation, so you can go back to that. But this one from Zachary McAllister, he's asking, Dr. Paley, thanks so much for giving this talk and your work on congenital bone deformity. I myself have hereditary multiple exostosis, and I was wondering about lengthening of the ulna.
Yeah, so there are indications in MHE for lengthening of the ulna. which is often shorter than the radius, and the radius may have some deformity, which needs correction as well. But the PRECICE nail and obviously the Max or these other versions are too large at present for forearm lengthening. So when we do forearm lengthening, we're doing it with an external fixator.
Gotcha. There's like 3 more questions, Dr. Paley. Do you want to just crank through those and call it a day, or?
Whatever you want.
All right, let's do it, guys. He's here for you guys. So let's see. This one from Anchor saying, "Hello, Dr. Paley. Do surgery complications increase with age, like beyond the age of 40?"
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that. So, Anchor, the answer is no. And we have successfully lengthened for stature. I think our oldest is 67. And and we've had several patients in their 60s who've chosen to go through this. We do lengthen a little bit slower in older patients, and 40 is not older. But once you get into mid 50s, 60s, we often will lengthen 3/4 millimeter a day instead of 1 millimeter a day. Again, just to make sure we get good bone formation. And at our center, the critical thing is physical therapy. And I think one of the reasons we don't get into as much trouble is we insist that everybody do therapy daily, and we provide that at our center. And it's a particular kind of therapy. It's not a kind of therapy that's readily available elsewhere. So no, we're not getting increased complications, but we are taking so many precautions. We have such a controlled protocol that it's hard to get into trouble at our center, because you're being surveilled daily by our staff. And if there's a problem, our PTs are the first to see it and they'll let us know. Plus, we see you every 2 weeks. But if there's a problem in between the 2-week visits, we'll see you, 24/7 as needed in order to address, a concern or a problem.
Okay. All right. The next one here is about rebreaking of the nails. So I asked earlier if waiting 2 years for a rebreak he had quadrilateral lengthening done versus 4 years raises the chances for the nails to malfunction.
So I can talk about previous models. With the P1, yes. P2.0, yes. P2.1, yes. But the P2.2, no. And with the STRYDE, yes. And the reason for it is that, with the STRYDE, it was corrosion. And the STRYDE itself would start literally breaking at the junction site. And what that would lead to is you lost rotational control of the nail and it wouldn't lengthen. So the STRYDE, after a while, we had that. And we had several patients who were waiting to re-break the nail. And we warned all of them that they have to be prepared for a nail exchange. So we would try the nail after breaking the bone. And if it worked, great. And if it didn't, we replaced the nail. We also had a couple that it worked to start and then it stopped working. These are already pre-used nails. It's kind of like pre-used cars, whatever. These are pre-used nails. This doesn't happen with new nails. Okay. I can't comment whether we're going to have any better or worse luck with the Max nail. I think it'll be more like the PRECICE nail in that it's titanium. But within a year, we've not had that problem. So if we rebroke them within a year, the nail was pretty reliable in its function.
Okay. This next one from Andy Homer is just saying, Dr. Paley, could misalignment of the internal nail and the tibia cause supination?
I'm sorry, misalignment of
the internal nail.
Cause supination. So I think what they're referring to, so in the word supination is referred to the foot, where your foot kind of turns inwards. We usually refer to it more as inversion, or varus. And it's not tightening of certain muscles is the most common cause to get supination of the foot. So especially the posterior tibial and the Achilles, they get tight. You can get that of the foot. If you're talking about varus malalignment of the tibia, where the bone lengthens and you get what's called axial deviation, it grows crooked. Varus malalignment is unusual. Valgus, which is actually very common and is something that we do certain things to prevent, because it'll happen if you don't do those things. So tibial lengthening is actually always a struggle against getting what's called valgus malalignment. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but kind of different things there.
This one is relevant to today's topic. What is the expected timeline to get back to walking, normally with the PRECICE Max versus the PRECICE 2.2?
Yeah, so I'm going to use the STRYDE as the way to answer this. And remember, nobody's put in a P-Max yet. So if we allow pretty much full weight bearing with 1 or 2 canes, as I was saying, we will, those patients never atrophied because they didn't have to use a walker. So with the PRECICE 2, for example, where you follow the precautions with a walker and so on, when the bone is healed, which is about 5 months after surgery for an 8-centimeter femur lengthening, you're finally able to walk without crutches or a walker. You're limping at that point because your muscles are weak. Okay? Not because the bones are weak, because the muscles are weak. That didn't happen with the STRYDE, because people were always walking full weight bearing, so their hip abductor muscles never really got weak. I think the same is going to happen here with the P-Max, is that you're going to, although you still have to wait till the bone is fully healed to run or jump, you're allowed to walk full weight bearing at all times, except maybe the first week or 2 when you're too sore to do that. So with the P-Max, I expect them to recover like the STRYDE nails did, which is that by the time they're finished lengthening, walking wise, they're maybe walking slowly, and they're going to increase that quickly, and they're never going to have too much limp, and they're going to recover to normal walking in the next month or 2, versus the P2. P2 also gets there, but it takes probably 2 or 3 more months.
Gotcha. Jonah is asking, will you ever open up a clinic in the UK?
No.
There you guys have it. All right. Guys. Here we go. Dr. Paley, you are a hero. Can't wait to see you next month.
Great. Well, happy to help all those who want our help. As I said, our doors are open for those who want to get a consultation, which can be done online or in person. And our information is online. It'll be updated for the PMAX shortly. And listen, it all starts with the consultation. And that's where you get to ask all your questions, get them all answered. If you do it in person, there's some advantage that we can examine you, get an EO scan, measure all your proportions and so on. Look, in the end, we're happy to treat you and offer you the safest limb lengthening we think is available anywhere.
Absolutely. And this last question here, I know a lot of people have been asking me about this, but I want to get your take on it. It's about unilateral lengthening, doing one leg for stature, doing one leg and then doing another leg after that leg is done or so. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Paley?
So, I mean, the impetus to do that, so you can put 2 nails in at a time. You could do femur tibia one side, femur tibia the other side. Or you can do 2 femurs or 2 tibias, okay? The advantage of unilateral lengthening is you always have one good leg to stand on. So the other leg, totally normal, you put full weight on it. The big disadvantage, and the reason I have done this before, the reason I would not recommend this, what if you get stuck? Let me explain stuck. For some reason, you cannot get the second side done. There was a pandemic, you couldn't get it done. You have a financial crisis, you can't afford to get the second side done. Now you're stuck with leg length difference. You develop some complication, and you developed a heart problem or something else that probably now makes it riskier to get this done. If this happens with the bilateral lengthening, your leg lengths are equal. Okay, you're not stuck. So I am not a fan of doing unilateral lengthenings for cosmetic stature reasons. I think it's a major downside. Too many risks of that. And you have to live with the leg length difference until you get the second side done.
This makes sense. All right, guys. That is it. I think that's all we really have here for the questions. This last question here, I'm just looking at it. The Intense PT. Oh, you went to the Paley Institute and they helped you out. That's awesome. Yeah, no, they're the best for a reason. So, yeah, guys, I want to thank all of you guys for coming on and listening to Dr. Paley. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Paley for coming on and sharing the latest updates on the PRECICE Max, as well as taking the time to answer patients' questions. Special thanks to Angelique and Lena. I saw you in there as well, the patient coordinators from the Paley Institute, for helping answering the questions in the chat. And huge thanks to all of you guys, the patients, the viewers from around the world, for tuning in. This was our largest ever turnout on a live stream ever. We were over 120 viewers live. That's like 4 times what we usually do. So incredible. I want to also wish you all a happy holiday season, joyous season, may be filled with happiness, health, and peace. And if you guys want to book your PRECICE Max surgeries at the Paley Institute, like I said, there's multiple ways to do that. There, you can go visit limbelengthening.org. That's their stature lengthening site. You can email Angelique A. Keller at paleyinstitute.org. I have a link to their websites in the link of this video. And if you have time this weekend, go ahead and check out Dr. Paley's interview that I posted on the channel yesterday. It's really, really good, really, really informative, and it kind of shows you where limb lengthening was and where it's going. Okay, guys? So I want to thank all of you guys. Dr. Paley, thanks so much for your time. That is it for episode 106 of Limb Lengthening Live. And until next time, this is Victor from Cyborg for Life and Dr. George Paley, the King of Limb Lengthening, signing out. See you guys next time.
Thank you.